Lovely to see you, Andrea.
And you,
Thanks.
Caroline.
Thanks for being here. Today's a brilliant topic, which is a little bit off the beaten track for our UK-based or our UK national investors. Today we're all about the international angle, because you and I love to travel. We've been all over the place, and we've met some fascinating people who want to invest here in the UK, either while they're living overseas or while they newly arrive in the UK. And you've become quite a niche specialist in mentoring people in that process.
Yeah.
So if someone's, let's say, living in Hong Kong or Singapore and they want to invest in the UK, what challenges are they going to face if they don't have, someone like you to help them?
Well, there's quite a few challenges actually. Obviously, bank accounts, they've got to have a structure to buy the properties in. All of them have lending challenges. There's quite a few challenges, but they're all fixable if they know what they're doing and if they have the right guidance, because I think that's the key. I have mentored, as you know, hundreds of people from all over the world: New Zealand, Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, Europe, everywhere. And I've, touch wood, I've never had anyone have any lending challenges. It's just the right person or the right people to help them get through that.
Does someone physically need to be in this country to buy property? No. So that's a good news. That's good news. All right. So let's imagine, because we're going to look at this two angles: someone who's non-dom, non-res, and then the other angle, which is someone who's international but living in the UK. So let's start with the non-dom, non-res. What would be the process that you would advise them to follow to get them going?
So how it usually works, I'll usually have a nice online chat with them to find out what their goals are first and foremost, where they want to get to, why are they doing it, the usual stuff really, because I need to be clear on their what they want to get from all of this. I then work on setting up a limited company. So I use a specialist accountant that can work with the fact that they're not here, what's their tax situation, even though, we don't usually talk about tax till they're earning money. We need to plan for that. Then we look at bank accounts. There's a few bank accounts that I work with specifically for internationals to get them the bank account open, which is a challenge, but it's possible. So we have to kind of do it remotely. Once we've done that, I get them to meet power team members, builders, agents, sourcing agents that I specifically cherry pick. I don't let any of my mentees have sourcing agents that are not regulated and not good at what they do.
Yeah.
Just because if it's someone that's not good at what they do, it makes my job harder because I have to try and help them figure it out. But also it makes it easier for them because they're not here. So the right power team is key. And obviously the brokers. So I have specialist brokers that ultimately deal with all of the international investors I work alongside. There's probably 3 or 4 that I would recommend, but there's probably 2 specific ones that are getting really great rates. Because I think that's the other thing. Everybody thinks they're going to be paying 9 and 10%. Well, that's not the case if you've got the right structure and the right power team.
Brilliant. Okay. So I do know from experience, when I was out teaching overseas, someone said, well, I've just Googled sourcing agents in the UK and 500 have come up on Google. So that could be quite daunting for someone who was just, sitting in Singapore or wherever thinking, I'm going to just buy some UK real estate. That would be daunting. So how on earth do our international students know that the deals that the sourcing agents are bringing them are good? How does that work for them? Because their idea of a good deal in Singapore or their idea of a good deal in Australia is going to be very different to what a good deal here is in UK.
So, I mean, we teach them how to run the numbers, do the due diligence, make sure that they're buying for demand, and do your research on your sourcing agents as well. I mean, ultimately, people that work with us, we recommend that out. So, and to be fair, the sourcing agents I work with, they want people that understand the numbers already. They don't want me to just like send them someone that I've spoke to on the phone for 5 minutes. They want them to understand the numbers. They want them to understand demand. They want them to understand the market. They want them to know what their interest rates are. They want the whole bag of mashing, if you like. They want the whole spectrum of what's possible, to understand that, because they don't want to be teaching somebody how to do that. That's not their job. They don't want to do that. They haven't got time for that. They're out there finding deals for you to invest in. The other thing is, and I have seen it happen, if students go with just some random sourcing agent, and bearing in mind, I meet sourcing agents all the time, and sometimes they've been doing it 2 weeks. They're not regulated. They don't know how to find good deals because they don't know what a good deal is.
Yeah.
So anybody can say they're a sourcing agent. They can say that they are. Being a good sourcing agent is a totally different ball game. So a good sourcing agent will want the students to be ready. So they'll want them to understand the process entirely, which is, what I do. I teach them how to do that.
Yeah. So it is a mutual agreement that, I, as a sourcing agent who finds the deals, I only want to source this onto a client who can act quickly, therefore have the right bank accounts, the right structure, the right bank lending, understand the deal in itself, and can move quickly on it. Yeah. So it's really important that foundation of knowledge is there before they get started. So that's where the process and the team is so vital, working alongside you so that you can plug them in to where they need to go. Yeah. I was just in touch with a couple of my Singaporean students yesterday. One of them's bought his second hotel in Liverpool. And, it does boggle your brain that you have a family sitting out in Singapore that are buying, owning, and effectively leveraging out to someone else to run a hotel here in the UK. What's so attractive about the UK market to our international investors? Why do they come here to buy?
But because they just don't make any money in their own country on property. We've got to remember we're just such a small island. There's 68 million people live here on this tiny little island. Whereas you look at New Zealand, they've got like 5 million, I think, last time I looked, and their island is like about the same size as here. So the demand here is fierce, absolutely fierce. We've got good work opportunities. So yeah, it just does stack up, and the numbers work. Even though house prices have gone up, so have rents. So house prices are still comparatively low to the rents that we can get. So it's really a no-brainer. The amount of people that I've taught over the years that are smashing it, and sometimes I watch them, I think, my God, I need to step up here. Come on. Because they're literally like buying all sorts of stuff, but with the knowledge that they can. And that's the other thing as well. Like you said about hotels, we start them off in buy-to-lets and HMOs, and then the next minute they're saying we're looking at commercial stuff, and they don't even live here. So people saying, I can't do that. I think, I've got students in Australia doing this. Of course you can.
I know, it's fantastic. So the process would be they buy, because obviously with the lending, our UK listeners will be sitting going, but how do they get lending? Because they're not here. They buy in the correct company structure, and then it's the company that creates the credit profile. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the idea is to buy with, say, bridging, and then once that's generating any kind of revenue, then we can move on to different type of lending and the likes. Okay.
It's not really that dissimilar how we do it ourselves. Like for your property that you want to refinance and add the value and pull the money back out, and you buy it in a bridge or your own money or however you buy it with angel money, it's the same principle. They buy it in their own money or someone else's money in the first instance, and refinance it onto a product for a better rate and pull the money back out. It's the same principle. It's all about the structure that they set up.
Okay. So the burning question people have when they first start is always, how much money do I need? And to our UK-based students, we always say, well, you don't need any money to start because we're using other people's money. With our international students, would you say it's the same response?
Yes, if they can get other people's money. It's always the same response, isn't it? It doesn't have to be your money that you start with, but you do need money. Our UK students need money, but it doesn't have to be theirs. And it's the same for international. I've got students still now that are using other people's money to buy deals, and they live out and wherever. And as we've always said as well, even if you've got a pot of cash, at some point you'll need a bit more money. So you're going to have to get it from somewhere else. So, but the fact that you can be sat at home in Singapore and buy properties here without ever leaving their house is just incredible. And it happens all the time. They're doing it all the time.
Yeah.
Just,
So our British pound, the currency is very attractive. The fact that the demand is so high, we get capital growth as well as cash flow. The demand is going to continue because our population increases year on year, and we can't actually expand our island any further. We're not like Dubai that are going to build a palm in the sea, or well, maybe never say never.
yeah.
We're politically relatively sound and economically relatively sound compared to some other countries.
Yes.
So that's 5 fairly compelling reasons people come to the UK to look for assets. So what about the moving of money? Because obviously we think about moving money and we think money laundering and what checks are going to be carried out. Money is going to be coming here to the UK from various places. How do we manage that and help our students cope with that process?
Again, it's about the power team. I've recently just done and updated my anti-money laundering checks as well, because I deal with a lot of internationals. I have to be fully aware of how that looks. But when you're moving money, obviously it's about moving it at the right time, moving it in the right structure, because a lot of people think they can just send it. Well, you can, and there is like companies like TransferWise, which I'm sure are great, but you need to shop around as well to find out the best way of moving your money across and when to get the best rates, because a lot of people can move money here and make money anyway, which is a massive win. And then buy properties, it's going to go up in growth and give you money in your pocket, another massive win. What's not to love? But again, it's about the right power team, and we do have people that we work with that help with that as well. And people I've worked with a long time, so highly trusted and highly regarded in the industry. So
brilliant.
but again, we do shop around to make sure you can get the best rates. But yes, please don't just shove it into your bank account once it's opened. That's a no, because the banks will just charge you a flat rate.
Yeah. So what about people who have moved to the UK and they want to start investing in property, but of course they've got no credit profile. Their visa status here might not be permanent, for example, or they might be working offshore in another jurisdiction for a lot of the time, and they might have a base here. More complex situations like that. How can we help those individuals?
I mean, the same applies really as if there was not here at all. So let's say they're from here, they've moved away. Let's try that one to start with. It depends on the tax treaty. It depends on, are they getting money sent here or are they getting money in another country? If the money goes into another country, then they're treated like they're not here. But if they've lived here previously, they will have a history of credit. So that will make it a little bit easier. If they've got bills here, potentially, it could make it easier. But we look at the bigger picture of what they're trying to achieve. When are they wanting to come back? Are they wanting to come back to live in the UK? Not that it overly matters, but we need to know then how to structure their business moving forward. But again, they can still get lending. I've got a guy that I've just mentored this year in Qatar. He's from here, lives in Qatar. He's great, and he's buying HMOs. He's doing serviced accommodation now as well. So he's looking into serviced accommodation. He's got his lending, his company, his structure all set up. But he is like because he's not here. He's treated like an international investor, but that's fine. That's fine, because he's still getting the lending, and he's still using other people's money. He's using his own money, and he's using the bank's money. So what's not to love?
So he's living and earning in a tax-free country, and then investing it back here in the UK and still getting lending. How amazing.
I love it. I was like that. And he was saying his interest rates are marginally higher than possibly what I could get. But he's not paying any tax, and he earns a reasonable amount of money in Qatar, and he's not paying any tax. So he's like, he's really not that bothered, because he's like getting it makes sense. And then eventually, his long-term plan, is to move back here eventually when he's got a good sized portfolio to fund his life.
Amazing. I do love watching those kind of stories. And I have to share about how the UK have a policy or a law that they have that if you have a certain amount of wealth or revenue generated here in the UK, you can actually get what's called an entrepreneurial visa. That a couple of my Hong Kong students have definitely used. In fact, they were the first two to ever be allowed into the country on this entrepreneurial visa. They were based in Hong Kong, investing here in the UK, but because they generated enough assets and income, they were allowed a visa to come and live here with their families. And while people might be thinking, why on earth would you move from Hong Kong to the UK? Well, there's a number of reasons right now that people are definitely keen on that. The schooling for their kids and everything else has just completely changed their lives. And that's, would you say, some of the other reasons that people start to invest here is maybe long term to look to come and settle here?
Yeah, so bizarrely, you've just said that. I had an email about 2 weeks ago. So there's I mentored them probably about 5 years ago now, and they're a family and they got 3 sons, twins and another boy. And on mentorship, they'd come over and they'd said, can we bring the boys with us? They were like 14 and 15. And, usually it's quite difficult when you've got children, but they were sat there taking notes, the boys. Wow. And then when I do Zooms now, because they're bigger, and they're like, hi, they're so lovely. But they've literally now, so they've been buying here for the last 5 years, little stuff, bigger stuff, even bigger stuff. They've now retired. They're traveling around Europe, and I'm seeing them in June because they're moving here. The older boys are going to university here. So they're moving here so we're meeting up in June for a catch up and just to kind of see next steps, because they are looking at more bigger stuff, and social housing they're really keen on. So that's kind of next steps, really. So it's lovely to see that.
There's so many of our students who are based overseas that send their kids to UK-based universities. Yeah. And then, of course, they come over to visit them. And then they use that time visiting their kids to obviously meet up with you, meet up with Power Team, view properties, maybe even view for the very first time stuff that they have bought and own. Yeah. Because a lot of our international students never actually see physically what they buy.
No, at all.
Never, right? And I think, this will boggle some of our UK listeners and investors' minds, because we're always like, view the properties, go and see the smelly brown swirly carpets. And here we are like, nope, you don't even need to be in the country.
And it's true. But again, it's about the Power Team. And I can't stress that enough. When we think about, and I think this is why I'm very precious about who our students use. Well, we both are, because and that's why we have lists with solicitors on and brokers on, because it's people that we've tried and tested and we trust. So it's the same for internationals, because they aren't here. These people are everything.
Culturally, some countries love buying new builds because the new builds have more value intrinsically than, say, an old historic building. Like in America, if it's more than like 20 years old, it's like, get rid of it. We want new build, new build, new build. That's American mentality, right? And we know that out in Asia, parts of Asia, again, the condos, new build developments is really, really attractive. So when there's a new build development happening here in the UK, those developers tend to target those Asian countries or international markets where new builds are seen to be a very valuable asset culturally. Now, we all know, and anyone who's listened to our podcast knows, that we do not invest in new build properties. That's not something that we see as a sound investment. And so how do you manage your students' mindset or mentality behind, the shiny condos with the glossy brochures that you're going to be buying versus this skanky little 3-bed terraced house in the middle of Manchester? Like, that's quite a leap, isn't it? How do you manage that?
It's the numbers. So I just run the numbers with them. So we'll do the numbers on what they're looking at. And I mean, we've had students come through that I've just bought an off-plan apartment in Manchester, and you're like, no, can you get out of that? Can you get out of it? What have you put into it? Yeah. And because once you run the numbers and show them what that looks like, they're like, oh, and where are you gonna? That money's there, so the returns are low. It's just insane. So again, numbers on that, numbers on some grim looking house in Wigan, let's say, and they're like, ugh. And then you show them the numbers and how they can pull the money back out, how that will grow. Because again, as we know, new builds, you can be 10 years down the road and they've not increased in value. So
a big mindset shift for them though, right? Because, these big developers are really good at having the marketing going, and it's right beside the pier, and it has this and it has that, and it has a concierge, and it has a gym, and it has a swimming pool, and everyone's thinking, ooh, this sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But it's going to make you no money. And it must be so frustrating for you, Andrea. And I know that it frustrates me that when we have UK-based investors who are in the same time zone that can literally go and physically see the stuff within an hour or 2 hours, and then we have someone on a 12-hour flight away, 8-hour time difference, and you find that the one with everything stacked against them, time difference, all the technicalities between moving the money and all of that stuff, they're doing more than the guys sitting here.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I do sometimes. I'll sometimes say to my students, "Have you been to your investment area yet?" No, it's only an hour away. Please go. And lastly, as students that do live here, that's come all the way from anywhere over the world, we're still, we've only recently just saw someone that said, "I can't get lending, but you've lived here 5 years. I can get lending for people that's never lived here. What's the problem?" And seeing that change quite quickly, just having the right knowledge, knowing how to do diligence, and getting the right power team in place. It's done. It's the right people.
Yeah. Knowledge is power always, right? Brilliant. Well, thank you, Andrea. I don't think our community really are aware of all the sexy international stuff we do in the background. And that's why having, an episode like this to just broaden people's horizons on where and where they can do it from, it should be really, really exciting. So if you're here in the UK and one of your goals is to live overseas, then when you move overseas, you don't need to stop investing. You can carry on.
Yeah, totally.
Love it. Love it. Brilliant. Take care of yourself, Andrea. Lovely to see you.
Thanks, Caroline. Bye, guys.